Hey everyone, Brayden here, coming to you with a breaking Disney news update on the canceled Mary Poppins area in EPCOT. We finally know exactly what was going to go in there. And this is news because it's confirmation of what was going to go in there. But for those of you who have watched our channel long enough, you already knew what was going in there because I've told you guys for many years what exactly was going on with this Mary Poppins area, which was supposed to come to EPCOT at Walt Disney World. Back in 2019, Disney announced this new Mary Poppins area, a new Mary Poppins attraction, they said, was coming to EPCOT, and Disney was acting like it was going to be this big new attraction, some sort of ride. They were very cagey on the details, would only show exterior art. Chapek was saying that, they're still doing development and things like this, despite the fact that at the time they already had all the art that we are about to take a look at, that I'm about to show you guys. And I told you guys then, inside of the Mary Poppins show building, there was to be a meet and greet and a teacup attraction, an indoor teacup attraction. This, of course, being something to appeal to children who don't have a whole lot to enjoy in the World Showcase, or historically haven't anyways. And also, of course, having the teacups inside also prevents some issues with rain and weather and things that we know to be issues in Central Florida there. And at the time, I recall some people were saying, "Oh, Brayden, you're being cynical. That's not true. This is Disney we're talking about. It was their big announcement at their parks presentation. There's no way it's just an indoor teacup ride. You're being negative. This is Disney. Disney isn't that cheap." Turns out they actually are. And in fact, they're actually more cheap than that, because even the cheapest idea Chapek could get Imagineering to make here turned out to be too expensive to execute on. And you don't have to take my word on any of this any longer, because this Mary Poppins attraction, which was destined for the UK Pavilion in EPCOT, put on pause back in 2020. It is so canceled at this point. The outside consultants Disney relies on these days to design additions for their parks, a job that used to be reserved for company-employed Imagineers, they are now just publicly releasing unreleased Disney project plans online. And thanks to someone over on Theme Park X who found the portfolio images on the outside consultant's LinkedIn, we now have two previously unreleased pieces of concept art as well as layouts for this now canceled Walt Disney World project. So first up, we have a new bird's eye perspective of the facade we first saw at the 2019 D23 Expo, that exterior that Disney was going to add back in the UK Pavilion in EPCOT, and that Cherry Tree Lane area, that facade would have served as the front of the show building that would go in back there. What would be inside the show building, Disney did not disclose at the time, something I think was intentional on Bob Chapek's part, who was CEO at the time, because he used the Mary Poppins project, which is well in development. They already knew exactly what this project was going to be, what would be inside of it. He used it as this big announcement at the parks panel because they simply didn't have that much new to announce. He brought up Dick Van Dyke, and for Disney to have revealed right then and there that it was going to be a basic teacup ride in a rectangular room, that would have been very anticlimactic. So instead, he danced around it and just said that there would be an attraction in there, the first ever Mary Poppins attraction in all of this, and led people there to imagine that Disney was going to do something exciting back there. And just to jog your memory, this is how Chapek was talking, knowing exactly what was going inside this facade.
So I'm sure by now you've guessed that we're bringing Mary Poppins to EPCOT in an exciting world. The pavilion will be home to the first ever Mary Poppins attraction in a Disney theme park.
So there he was, hyping up a relatively small sort of project, making it seem like this big thing, ensuring that the hardest core fans that he was hyping up, that they would end up being disappointed later on. And this goes to show that even back in 2019, the Emperor had already started to lose his clothes, or had already lost his clothes. The funding for parks projects was rapidly running out of steam in the 18 months or so leading up to March 2020. And March 2020 is that pivotal point where Disney started to use the events of that time as the excuse, the blanket excuse for the lack of capital expenditure at the parks, which is still just as abysmal 3 years later here. And all the while, so many talented Imagineers have exited the company due to a lack of projects and that is continuing to happen as we speak. It's a very sad situation over there. Lifting off the veil, we now have our first look inside the show building of this canceled project, where you will see on the right what appears to be a pre-show for the teacups, as well as the teacups themselves. As you can see, what we are going to get here was a spinner ride with 2D trees placed around the spinner, which may seem very low budget to you, and of course it is. In defense of the Imagineers who were working on this though, which I have had some communication with in the past, I was told that at one point prior to this iteration, they were testing using a projection screen, a 360 projection type of setup similar to what we saw with the EPCOT experience over at the Odyssey Pavilion, where in the EPCOT experience, you were on Cherry Tree Lane and the leaves sort of kicked up around you, and this would correspond with the spinning of the teacups. What Imagineers found in their tests is that doing the 360 projection and all of that was very unsettling, because to prevent people from getting sick on a spinner ride like this, the reason you get sick is because you become disoriented. The liquids in your ears are all messed up. So what you need are static visual references in order to be able to sense where you are in the world during one of these spinner attractions. You must have a static environment around you so you can visually track where exactly you are and not get sick. So doing the 360 projections, I actually thought that idea sounded quite cool. It seems like it would have been something that would not have worked well with this attraction, so hence the static cardboard cutouts surrounding we see here. And I will also say, to be charitable, it does look like we were going to get a really cool mural in here, which does look quite nice in that art there. In the final piece of new art we got showing what the experience would be like at a guest level, we get a glimpse into what the theme was for the ride. This ride would not have been based on the original film, Mary Poppins, but rather a scene from the 2018 film, Mary Poppins Returns, which features the same characters and aesthetics we see in this now leaked concept art. There's a particular scene here, which as you can see lines up very well with the concept art. Let me know what you guys think about what we would have gotten here if we had gotten the Mary Poppins attraction. Should Disney have had the funding to put towards the project, which they ended up not having? Given how basic of a plan this was and how much time and money Disney spent developing this plan down to every last detail, as you can see here, this thing was ready to go, blueprints and all. It is incredible that despite all of the work that they had already done, all the resources they had already sunk into it on a personnel level, on a planning level, on a development level, and how cheap it looked like execution-wise this was going to be, Disney was not able to follow through on something they'd already sunk so many resources towards. Ex-CEO Bob Chapek was asked about this project not that long ago. It was this time last year, if you can believe it, at the last annual shareholders meeting in March of 2022, and he was asked if we'd ever see this paused project come to fruition, and Chapek blamed the pandemic and related cash flow issues, liquidity issues, as to why this was not able to happen, and he even called the project capital intensive. Mind you, we're talking about one off-the-shelf spinner ride in a pretty basic looking show building here in EPCOT. So I'd shudder to think what Chapek would call Epic Universe, what Universal's working on, where they have many rides like this, as well as much more complex attractions, all being built simultaneously currently in Florida. Listen to this from Chapek last year.
Obviously, we had to take a pause in our development of some of our capital-intensive projects, given the cash flow implications of the pandemic. Certainly, the Poppins project, which I was very excited about, has had to be put on hold for a while, as has the Quinjet. But you know, those are projects that we've got sort of in a holding pattern right now. And as our cash situation becomes a bit more robust and a little bit back to normal in terms of our liquidity, we look forward to hopefully refunding those projects in the future. But thank you so much for being such a great fan.
Given how much development work Disney has already sunk into this one, I'm still pretty surprised that Disney isn't going forward with it. It doesn't seem like a very expensive project, and I do think this would be a good attraction for kids, and since they already put so much work towards it, it seems like a no-brainer. At this time, we know that this project is canceled. This is something that we've heard from our sources, and Disney, it seems like they just want to wash their hands of the EPCOT project. Disney bit off more than they could chew, and now the funding funding situation has changed for the worse, and it seems like Disney wants to avoid having to invest more money and start more projects or commit to doing anything, which is why now at these parks panels and these events that Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro throws, he talks about how they have ideas, how they're brainstorming. You notice he's not committing to projects, and that's because they aren't committing to projects. They don't have the money to commit towards projects, or rather aren't willing to commit money towards projects, and that has a lot to do with the financial situation at Disney. But I just wanted to say, this isn't to say that this Mary Poppins attraction will never come to fruition. It likely won't, but this does seem like something that if Disney could get money in the future, maybe Iger looks to this project as something to fund. This is something that still could end up happening, but as of this time, the project is canceled. And typically when a project like this is canceled, if it ever comes back, it usually comes back in a much different form, a changed form. But as of right now, Disney does not seem to have an interest in allocating money towards any sort of project like this or any other CapEx for that matter, because their focus and obligations are elsewhere, and the parks are being used to subsidize a worsening situation at the studios in a tightening economic environment, while being highly levered thanks to the Fox acquisition made by Bob Iger 5 years ago, which is what Chapek was referring there in that clip I played for you when he was talking about cash flow and liquidity. I do think that that was a reference to Iger and the Fox situation and all of that. All of that being said, there is some hope under Iger here that we can see an Imagineering turnaround of some kind. So if the negative news tires you out a little bit, like it does me, stay tuned because I do want to get some of my thoughts out on that and some of the things I've been hearing in a video very soon on the Imagineering front, where there may be things starting to improve. We will see. So make sure you're subscribed with those notifications on. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon from the Mickey D's Magic Studio. This is Brayden. Have a magical day.